If you enjoy what you hear here today, please consider supporting me on my Patreon page. Every dollar helps, and you get to see content that you won't see here. Hello! Just as a quick heads up, this video will only house the first half of this chapter of human nature. The second half of this chapter will replace little glimpses tomorrow. I don't want to keep you for long from the story you came here for, so if you want more details onto why this is, look in the description below. I should have a reason in there somewhere. Chapter 18. No Man's Land. The clicking from that typewriter was deafening in this otherwise silent room. It had been 4 days since the princess had pardoned me and deemed me fit to walk among her subjects. Nobody in the town, myself included, really knew how to handle the situation. Ever since, my friends had taken it upon themselves to help integrate me into Ponyville society. They all had taken turns showcasing me around town, trying to prove how normal I could be. It did little to help the cause, though. Did the receptionist have to keep glancing at me like that? I fidgeted uncomfortably beneath her eyes. The citizens were still tense whenever I walked by. Casual conversations would turn to hushed whispers and darting eyes. Laughter would almost always die down. I was always given a wide berth as I walked through the streets, as everyone was quick to back out of my way. It didn't help that I felt uncomfortable around them as well. After all we had been through, it almost felt wrong. Like a bad town-wide case of whiplash. I kept my eyes glued to the wooden floorboards, but it didn't stop the occasional glances from boring into me. I had been trying to get a job lately, hoping to find some sense of normalcy during my time here. Bonbon had been gracious enough to give me a mercy period for rent, but I still had to find a way to make money, or bits as the ponies called it. The princess had given me compensation to pay for my troubles, but I didn't want to rely on it. It kept reminding me of why I received it in the first place. Lyra had offered to cover my rent, which was where I had put my foot down. I didn't mind all the help she had given me, far from it, and I knew I had a long way to go before life in Ponyville started running smoothly, but I wasn't about to become a charity. I wanted to prove that I could take care of myself. This wasn't going to work out. I should just leave. Everywhere else has been a flop. I rose from the bench, ready to go, and the door to the mayor's office swung open. A mayor exited the room, her curious eyes lingering on me as she marched down the hall. The receptionist looked up from her typewriter with a practiced smile.
"The mayor will see you now, Mr. Gray,"
she announced in a cheery tone. I hesitated but nodded in thanks, ducking beneath a small doorway and entering the office. A grand desk dominated the center of the room. The mayor sat comfortably behind it, a feather quill clenched in her teeth as she scribbled signatures on an official-looking scroll. Natural light flooded in from the room's sole window, its tall green curtains peeled back to greet the sunlight. Towers of bookshelves stood guard behind her, boasting literature that would have gone right over my head. I caught my reflection in the mirror on the wall behind her and combed my fingers through my hair, hoping to look a little more presentable. I sat patiently in one of the 2 chairs positioned before her, waiting for her acknowledgement. Eventually, she looked up from her half-moon spectacles and let out a gasp.
"Oh, Mr. Gray, I didn't hear you come in,"
she explained, spitting out her quill. She subtly adjusted the papers and knickknacks on her desk. The mayor then rested her hooves on the desktop and stared at me expectantly.
"So, how are you adjusting to your stay here in Ponyville?"
"It's going all right," I shrugged, not looking her in the eyes. "Slow going, but it's still going. Friends are helping out, so that's, well, helpful." I grinned slightly. "They're actually trying to help me find a job."
"Oh?"
The mayor cocked her head to the side and raised an eyebrow.
"I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understand,"
she admitted.
"Was the princess's compensation not enough? If you need more bits, I'm sure she would be more than willing to—"
"The compensation was more than enough," I quickly cut in, tacking on a thankful smile. "It's not so much for money as much as it is Just trying to make everyone get used to seeing me. And also to help me find some sense of normalcy here. Until I get back home, I explained. Not to mention, doing absolutely nothing all day is driving me up the walls.
Ah, I see.
The mayor grinned.
Have you applied anywhere so far?
Yeah, a few places. I nodded. Lyra and I were chasing help wanted ads all day yesterday. And Daisy even let me try working at her flower shop with her friends. I shook my head, a ghost of a smile forming. I'm not sure if it's my intimidating good looks, but everybody seemed to keep their distance until that shift ended. I joked. The mayor struggled to keep her smile up. I offered a disarming shrug. It's fine, though. Never considered myself much of a salesman anyway.
Have you had any luck other than that?
She asked hopefully. A small sigh escaped me. No, not really. I admitted in defeat. Don't suppose you know anyone around town desperate enough to hire the human? She offered a sympathetic smile.
I think I can find some, Pony,
she promised. A small silence filled the air, and the clock in the room counted the strained seconds as they ticked by. I was having a hard time finding the words to say. It was the mayor who offered to break the silence.
So will that be all for today?
She asked. Well, it was now or never. I was actually hoping you could help me with something, I confessed, finally looking up to her. Her ears perked up and she sat a little straighter.
Of course, she chirped. After all, the princess did task me to make sure your transition to Ponyville goes as smoothly as possible. So what seems to be the trouble?
She asked, leaning in slightly. Do you know where I could find some school books? I asked.
School books?
She echoed. Yeah, I'm still attending school where I'm from, I explained. I'm not sure if our, worlds have the same education, but something tells me I'm going to have a lot of catching up to do when I get back. I joked. Might as well at least try to catch up while I can.
Well, my first guess would be the Ponyville schoolhouse.
The mayor thought aloud, tapping her hoof to her chin.
But that all depends. What subjects were you studying?
Just some basic classes, I shrugged. I doubt you have American history or anatomy, but if I could get my hands on a calculus or a fundamental physics textbook just to brush up on, that would be great. She stared at me for a second, leaning in as if she hadn't heard correctly.
Maybe the schoolhouse won't do after all,
she said, more to herself.
You're a little ahead of those classes, I'm afraid. The library might be your best bet.
A small pit formed in my stomach, and I tried to gulp down the lump in my throat. Thanks, I nodded. How badly did I really need those books? I'll try to swing by there sometime.
Any way I can help,
she beamed. I stood up, and she reached her hoof out for me to shake, and I gingerly accepted it. 4 days. 4 days, and this surreal sense still lingered. Behind my practiced smile, my mind reeled at the touch of her hoof in my palm, as her large eyes stared into mine and her protruding muzzle grinned. It had been over a month since our first contact, and barely less since Lyra and Zecora had taken me as their friend. Why did it feel like I was just recently starting to really look at them?
Because they aren't normal,
a voice hummed in the back of my head.
At least, not to us, are they?
Now, is there anything else I can help you with?
The mayor asked in her usual cheery tone.
No ponies giving you too much trouble?
Hardly any pony is giving me the time of day, much less giving me trouble. I blinked, realizing what I had just said. My fingers instinctively pulled the rubber band around my left wrist and let it snap back against the skin.
You're starting to talk like them now,
my headache warned. Just a slip, I assured it. I'm running a bit late, though, I explained to the mayor, who eyed me warily after my odd display. Told my friends I'd meet them at Daisy Chain for lunch. Don't want to keep them waiting. I flashed her a reassuring grin. Thanks for the help, though.
A pleasure, as always.
She nodded as I moved to the door.
Same time tomorrow?
Like I have a choice, I teased.
You know you do,
the mayor reminded sternly. I paused at the door, hand already twisting the knob. A small sigh escaped me, followed by an even shorter chuckle. Yeah, I guess I do. I turned and gave her a nod. I'll see you tomorrow. As I passed through the doorway, I remembered a small thought, and my hand grabbed the door to keep it from closing. I peeked my head back in with an embarrassed smile. There was one other thing, I said sheepishly. My bare toes drummed against the hardwood floor outside the office. About the rest of my clothes. The mayor blinked in confusion.
The rest of your... Oh!
She tried to hide her embarrassed blush behind her laughter, and her eyes seemed to want to look anywhere but me.
Yes, you did have more clothes when you came here, didn't you?
She chuckled nervously, and she shuffled quickly through the papers on her desk and flew through the stacks hiding in her drawers.
I believe they should still be in the hospital,
she explained, looking up from her paperwork.
But I'll have to check. How badly do you need them?
More than you'd think, I thought. I glanced down at my sore feet. Don't worry about it, I'll check for you, I offered. I gave the doorway a light knock as I turned to leave again, and this time it was the mayor that called me back.
Oh, Mr. Gray?
I stopped in mid-stride and poked my head back through the door expectantly. The mayor offered me a sheepish grin.
I just wanted to say that I like your new main cut. It makes you look much less...
Her voice trailed as she looked for the appropriate word.
Wild,
she offered, with a sincere smile. Yeah, well, back to civilization and all, I joked, swinging my arm in a sarcastic gung-ho. Might as well start looking human again. I turned out of the room and found my way to the exit. The walk from the town hall to the Daisy Chain restaurant wasn't long, but the eyes that followed me made it seem to stretch for an eternity. I stayed close to the edge of the dirt roads, and everyone went out of their way to move to the other. I pushed my hands into my pockets and pushed my eyes forwards. The air still felt volatile whenever I walked outside. My small circle of friends was trying their best to diffuse it. They were working so hard to help the rest of the town feel comfortable around me and me with them. But it was becoming obvious that it was an uphill battle for both ends. The door of a nearby house opened next to me as I passed it. The mare made it halfway out her door before seeing me, letting out a frightened squeak and retreating back to her home. I deflated with a sigh as her door slammed shut and the curtains quickly closed. My reflection watched me through the darkened windows.
What's the matter?
It asked.
Isn't this what you've always wanted?
I didn't dignify it with a response. The Daisy Chain eventually came into view. My small circle of friends sat in our usual spot, outdoors and close to one of the fenced corners. Noteworthy was the first to see me and flagged me over, and the rest of the group greeted me with warm smiles to chase away the numb cold in the air. Oh, how nice it was to see friendly faces in this town.
Hey, Rumi,
Lyra chirped. She looked me over and patted the empty seat next to her.
I see you got your main cut. Did you see clips like I suggested?
Daisy asked. Yeah, and I don't think she did too bad, I offered as I sat between her and Lyra. Haha, good old close-cut clips, Noteworthy sighed as he leaned back. I ought to see her sometime. It's been a while since I've gotten my mane cut, too. He flipped the forelocks of his mane with a scoff. I mean, look at it. It's almost as bad as yours used to be. I snorted and picked up my menu as Daisy threw him a playful punch. He shrugged it off with a grin and took a bite out of his half-eaten sandwich. So, how did that go anyways? He asked in between bites. Oh, about as well as you'd think. I chuckled as I looked over the menu. I wasn't sure why I bothered. I got the same thing every day. Maybe I could mix it up this time. She had the Beast of the Everfree in her shop. I had magical scissors flying around my face. I explained with a roll of my eyes. Zecora and Lyra covered their grins with their hooves, but Noteworthy struggled to suppress his own smirk. I mean, we softened up to each other. Eventually. I continued. Small talk in a barbershop is a strange thing. Apparently, I saved her son. I told her how excitable he and his friend were during the field trip, and I swear she nearly busted out a scrapbook of him. I shook my head with a faint smile. We got comfortable enough with each other that she actually tried to talk me into getting a whole different haircut. Apparently I have such a nice, natural wave in my mane that cutting it any shorter would have been a crime.
And it appears that your demise was an inability to compromise,
Zecora teased.
I visited a salon once, hearing stories of good delight, but every time I left, my mane was not quite right. It does look nice this way, Fluttershy offered meekly from the other side of Lyra. I think Clips made the right call.
I returned her timid smile with a nod and focused back on the menu, trying to get those innocent eyes out of my head. The same innocent eyes I nearly killed twice. The same innocent eyes that saved me twice. I hope she didn't take it the wrong way. It wasn't that I was ungrateful. It just felt so uncomfortable. Like I owed her more than I could ever repay. And I was reminded of it every time I saw her. My collar felt like it was strangling me. I tugged at it with my fingers. Yeah, well, this was the compromise, I explained, jumping back to the subject. Clips wanted to take it a step further and dye my hair, too. The table burst into a small fit of giggles.
No way!
Lyra laughed. Oh, yeah, I nodded. I slammed some bits on the counter and ran out of the shop when she went back to look for colors.
Oh, you should have done it, though,
Daisy exclaimed, giving me a friendly push.
It would have looked so cute.
Are you kidding? Noteworthy demanded. And there's a stallion. Well, in a matter of speaking, he doesn't need his mane dyed for everyone to like him. He leaned towards me in front of Daisy and held out a hoof. Don't worry, buddy. I got you back. I grinned and knocked my knuckles against his hoof.
Well, I'm serious, Daisy pressed. Highlights are in nowadays. It wouldn't hurt to jump in on the trends while you're here.
She turned to Noteworthy with a sinister look in her eyes.
In fact, I think you should try it too,
she teased. Noteworthy reeled his head back. Oh no, he shook his head. Not on your life.
Come on, it would be cute, she egged him on, tracing a hoof down his forelocks. I can see it now, just a single white stripe.
Noteworthy swatted her hoof away in disgust.
It doesn't have to be a big one,
she giggled. I rolled my eyes as the two continued their banter, and Zecora eventually joined in, bearing down on Noteworthy with Daisy, and when the zebra began explaining to the pony how good he might look in stripes, a small fit of giggles erupted out at the table. The waitress finally came and took my order. Her voice still shook slightly when we talked, but it was an improvement from the jittery mess she was when I first started eating here.
So, that was 1 peanut butter and jelly sandwich with a salad on the side.
She read off her list. It was the same as every other time I ate here. I wasn't given much choice. Most of their meals involved flowers or hay, and they didn't serve meat. Nobody in this town did, actually, much to my stomach's contempt.
Did you want the tulips in your salad?
She asked. I was about to decline until something nudged me in the side, and I didn't even have to turn to know what Lyra wanted. Yeah, sure, I nodded. Extra, too, if it's not too much trouble. Thanks, Strawberry.
You're the best,
Lyra whispered in delight as the waitress left us.
Oh, the tulips here are the best.
I'll take your word for it, I chuckled. She looked past me to the waitress as she entered the restaurant.
Shortcake seems to be warming up to you a bit, she pointed out.
Yeah, I'd hope so. I see her just about every day now, I explained, taking a sip from my drink. A faint gasp grabbed our attention and we turned to Fluttershy. A happy spark gleamed in her eyes as her wings unfurled slightly.
That's it,
she announced softly.
We've been going about this all wrong. We can't expect every pony to like you because they see you everywhere. We just need a chance for you to talk to every pony.
I paused, setting my cup back down. I'm not following, I admitted. Lyra seemed to catch on quickly, though, and her eyes widened in amazement.
Oh my gosh, Fluttershy, you're a genius!
The Pegasus gave a soft but proud cheer.
Yay!
And Lyra turned to me.
Think about it, she said excitedly. Me, Sakura, Noteworthy, and Daisy, and now Strawberry and Clips. Every pony who got a chance to just sit down and talk got to know you, the real you. And they found out you're not the beast they're all still afraid of. What if we gave the rest of Ponyville that chance too?
I sighed. These quests to convince the ponies that hunted me not all that long ago to like me was getting exasperating, but I owed it to my friends to at least try. And how do you suggest we go about doing that? She started to say something, but cut herself off.
I don't know,
she admitted, slouching over the table.
What if we throw a party?
Daisy suddenly pitched in. A party? I echoed.
Yeah, Lyra chimed in. Nothing like a proper Ponyville welcome to warm every pony up to the new guy.
I looked between the two excited mares in disbelief and shook my head. Girls, I'm gonna level with you? That sounds like a silly idea, I said. Who in their right minds would go to a party thrown for...
Did some pony say party?
Oh, Jesus! A pink blur shot up in the small gap between me and the table, and I stumbled back in shock and fell to the ground. My hands cradled my head from the hard landing, and I shot a glare up to our uninvited guest. No, Pinky, please take my seat. I insist, I muttered sarcastically. Her ears flicked in acknowledgement, and she turned to me with a bright smile.
Oh, don't worry. I won't be here for long. I just heard the magic word and decided to drop by. Thanks for the offer, though.
I bit my tongue as she turned back to my friends and pulled my chair up next to her. As annoyed as I was, though, I couldn't help but notice that something was off about her.
So, what's the party for?
She asked. Her forelegs tapped excitedly on the table as she stood on her hind legs.
We were just thinking about throwing one for Hunter,
Lyra explained through an uneasy smile.
Nothing's set in stone, though. It's probably not even going to happen.
Pinky cut her off with a gasp.
What? No party?
She slammed her hoof down on the table, and everyone jumped.
Blasphemy! Nothing says friendship and laughter like a good party, and no pony can throw a party as good as me. So...
She blinked and froze as her voice trailed.
So, if you ever need any advice, you know where to find me.
She chuckled nervously, and her hooves tugged slightly at her mane as she ran through them. And it finally clicked. Pinky, did you straighten your hair? I asked.
Huh?
She stopped playing with her mane and turned to me with a confused look. Pink curtains covered her eye as she cocked her head to the side, and her eyes followed it as it swayed back and forth before her. She gave a nervous laugh, looking off to the side.
Oh, not exactly. My mane kind of has a mind of its own,
she explained, waving a hoof dismissively. She turned to Lyra, who quickly pinned her uneasy smile back on.
I have a list of some really good party stores,
Pinky said excitedly.
You should stop by Sugar Cube Corner sometime. If any pony knows how to make some pony really feel welcome, it's me.
Pinky flinched away slightly, either from realizing the dark irony of what she just said, or noticing my slight glare through her thick curtain of hair.
Actually, I'll get out of your manes,
she resigned, her voice cracking slightly. She shrank back with a few steps and showed a hopeful smile.
If you ever want to talk, you know where to find me.
It almost sounded directed to me. She trotted away from our table with a dying spring in her step. I leaned over the rest of my food, trying to get her out of my head. She wasn't going to guilt trip me, not after what she did. But as I looked around the table, the look on her face seemed to burn in everyone's mind as they looked guiltily as their food. And I lost my reason to relish it.
I should go check on her,
Fluttershy announced worriedly, standing up from the table. With a quiet flutter of her wings, she lifted to the air and flew to her disappearing friend. The table sat silent as the somber air loomed over. The waitress arrived with my food, and I stared at the plate, suddenly disinterested in eating. I slid the salad bowl next to Lyra, and golden tulips resting on top. Her favorite. With a defeated sigh, she pushed it away, propping her head in her hooves. I should probably get going too, I admitted. I tore off a piece of my sandwich for the road, and my friends looked up to me as I stood. I need to run a few errands. See if I can get my clothes back before it gets any colder, I explained.
Oh, I'll go with you,
Lyra offered, giving me a small grin. I held back a small sigh of relief, thankful for her offer. Everything felt a little easier to handle with her around, and she had an uncanny ability to keep me busy whenever something was on my mind.
Thank you for this lunch yet again,
Zecora nodded.
It is always a welcome treat, but for now I have a brew to attend, and to my home I should retreat. Yeah. I probably need to get back to Lily and Rose at the flower stand,
Daisy pointed out. And I should get back to the park, Noteworthy chimed in. Hey, you should stop by sometime in the mornings. I could probably add you into the performance. You said you can play an instrument, right?
We'd have to wake up in the mornings first,
Lyra interjected, playfully snarking at me.
Hey, I'm getting better at it,
I defended. It just made me a little nocturnal is all. Lyra giggled.
Yeah, I've noticed.
We laughed lightly, chasing away the somber atmosphere from earlier. It made me glad. I always hated leaving on a sour note.
You still owe us a story of one of your adventures,
Daisy reminded me.
When are we gonna get it?
Well, I've been a little busy, I joked. But let's shoot for tomorrow. I should have a good one by then. They seemed satisfied with the response, and very eager. We gave our farewells and went our separate ways. Lyra trotted closely next to me, a small spring in her step. It offered me some comfort, despite the dread that was slowly taking over. I hadn't visited the hospital since I escaped. Too many memories discouraged me from even thinking of checking in. With Lyra by my side, though, I finally felt brave enough to confront them.